Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from around the world today. Welcome to our security panel for PulumiUP 2024. Today's topic is secrets and policies in the world of cybersecurity. We have put together an amazing set of panelists today to explore how to manage an increasingly complex threat landscape, build strong secret management practices, and leverage automation for consistent, reliable security. Let's begin with a round of introductions. Maya, let's start with you.
Sure. My name is Maya Kaczorowski. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm currently fun employed, but I was most recently at Tailscale as well as GitHub and Google as a product manager in security.
Thank you, Maya. Welcome. Jason?
Hey, everybody. Jason Meller here, based in Connecticut these days. I'm working currently at 1Password as a VP in the product area. I'm actually also the former founder and CEO of Collide, the device trust company that they acquired earlier this year. Spent my entire career in security, starting off with my favorite job ever was working for a computer incident response team. Excited to chat with you all today.
Thank you. Ofer?
Hi everyone, I am Ophir. I work in the CDO office in Wiz, based in Tel Aviv. I work on Kubernetes and container security, helping customers deploy Wiz at scale and ensuring that their Kubernetes and container security environment is well configured.
Awesome. Thank you all for those introductions. We are excited to have all of you all today. Let's jump right in with our first question. We know that cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing. AI, in particular, is being used to enhance security while at the same time create more sophisticated attack strategies. And I want to open this question to all of you all. Like, what are the most pressing cybersecurity threats organizations face today? And how is AI impacting both sides of the equation, both the attack side as well as the defense side? Who would like to kick us off? Go for it, Jason.
Yeah, I think when you think about the total threat landscape and AI's influence on it, the way that I like to start is really starting to think about the economies or the economic conditions in which cause attacks and defense to occur, right? So at the end of the day, the majority of the attacks most businesses experience are really from professional criminals. These are folks that have built effectively a business around compromise, and their goal is to make money at the end of the day, right? Not only do they have maybe extended objectives that have military application, but at the end of the day, majority of them, they're trying to cover their expenses, almost like a real expense business, and then make a profit on top of that. So if you think about AI and how normal businesses think about it, they see it as this massive opportunity to reduce the operating costs of their enterprise, right? How can we take the most expensive part of what we're doing, the software engineering components, the human being components that are the most costly, and then have AI take responsibility over that? And how can we also use AI to increase the chances of success? Well, attackers are doing the exact same thing, right? They're thinking about their entire criminal enterprise like a business, and they're saying, all right, AI has given us the opportunity to dramatically increase the chances that a particular phishing attack or my malware that I'm developing are going to go undetected, or they're going to effectively succeed. And I can do that without spending the innovation points or the actual cost of hiring best of breed engineers or social engineers. I can now do that at scale with tooling that allows me to do that in other ways. And I can now overcome other barriers to entry. Like most of these criminal enterprises, they're not from the United States, they're not from North America, they don't speak English as a first language. That's often the first sign you look for in a phishing email is, does it not feel well written? AI has completely leveled the playing field there. So important to understand that everybody's going to embrace AI because it's going to dramatically make the profitability of being a criminal significantly more than it was. And then ultimately, it's going to make the success of their attacks go up considerably. So we, on the other hand, as defenders, we have to embrace AI for the same reasons. We have to level up so that we're prepared to mitigate the majority of that extra productivity they have with taking the most expensive resource we have, which is our human beings that are triaging alerts, that are responding to incidents, and how can we apply AI to those methodologies so that we can, again, increase the amount of effort and money the criminals need to put forth in order to successfully compromise us. And we need to get that high enough so that they actually have no economic incentive to produce the attack. And if we do that, then we'll be back to where we were before AI even got into the picture.
Totally, totally. You would like to add?
Yeah, I'll speak on the defender side specifically. I think I've been talking to a lot of CISOs about, or other security leads about the issues they're facing these days, including AI. And I would say that there's a set of people who have already adopted AI or ML for as part of existing security operations or security response tools. So help me triage these alerts, help me automatically write an incident response report, that type of thing. And I think that's a common thing, like using AI as a tool, just like we see in any other industry, we're seeing in security. I think the novel security AI problems are not that many. Like it's just something else to secure. It's just data to secure. I think some of the more interesting problems that we have are around governance of Gen AI models. So I'm hearing from a lot of people that, hey, we bought ChatGPT for the sales team. I want to make sure no other team is using it, or that type of thing. Or and separately, data classification. So I'm going to be training a model on a bunch of data. The only classification I had internally before was this is or isn't PII. Now I need to know, is this PII that was approved to train in a model? Does it come from a customer in this jurisdiction? Is it a phone number? Like is it customer provided or customer derived? Like these are some of the kind of new problems we're facing around AI and security. But I'd say the majority of what I'm seeing is help me use AI to do the boring part of my job that I was already doing.
Totally. Thank you, Maya. Ofer, do you add more here?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jason and Maya. And I think if you look at the landscape, the top threats that we're facing are crypto mining, cloud misconfiguration, phishing attacks, insider attacks, right? If you look at the Uber breach that happened in 2016, Uber got sued. Uber had to pay a huge fine because some developer left their credentials in the code, right? So there are still all those kinds of silly things that we think do not exist, but the honest truth is that they do, and we need a way to tackle that. And I think where AI will take place is attackers will use it to craft like more sophisticated phishing attacks, digital twins, better ability to analyze the vulnerabilities in your code, and obviously to inject obfuscated code into the supply chain, like the XZ attack, which uses cryptic M4. It's like technology from the 70s, no offense, but no one knows what it does. It looks innocent. No one can review it. So this is where I think AI will help attackers get more sophisticated.
Totally. Thank you. You all three have made the best case for using AI. If not, organizations don't use it, they're going to fall behind for sure. That brings me nicely to the next question. There are a lot of things always happening, like security is moving forward, technology is moving forward, and organizations are struggling to keep up with the demands of staying ahead of the curve, but also in terms of security, but also meet the demands of business agility. Like sometimes developer feel like some of the stringent security policies might limit their speed and ability to deliver. And I want to open up this question, maybe Ofer, to begin with this time. Like, how can organizations balance the need for robust security with the demands of business agility?
Right. So I think organizations should use tools that allow them to verify exploits at runtime, right? To do external attack surface modeling, and the classic hard and right approach of risk assessment and prioritization. The main problem with security problems is where do I even start? Where do I begin? Right? I have 1,000 findings in my environment. Why should I quit and go home? Or like I need a tool, and this is what CNAPP, this is the claim to fame of a CNAPP tools. Gives you the reduce the alert fatigue and bring you the toxic combination that is most critical and high to fix in your environment. And if you think about the different environments that we're living in, we have the hyperscalers, the CSPs, and then we also have Kubernetes, which is a cloud in its own right. So for Kubernetes, you can shift left in the sense that you can gate deployments that have malicious container images or containers that run as root and all kinds of stuff that you don't want to happen in your environment. But for the cloud, you take a reactive rather than proactive approach. So if someone opens an S3 bucket to the public, and this S3 bucket has like social security number or PII or credit card, then you're in big trouble. And it's harder to shift left on the cloud rather than on newer cloud native platforms like Kubernetes. So it's a lot of challenge, and you need the right tools in order to reduce the alert fatigue and give you what really matters and what is exposed in your environment.
Totally. Anyone would like to add?
I think I'll just add that, you were talking about balancing security with demands of the organization, including developer velocity. I think security at the end of the day serves the business. And if you are hiring a CISO, you're going to ask them like what your priorities are, and the CISO is going to answer, my priorities are whatever the business's priorities are. And if they're not saying that, then they're probably not the right person for the job in some sense, right? There's very few organizations where security can tell the business what to do. And there's very few cases where that actually should be the case. So, for example, we were just talking about Gen AI. The question should be, how do I secure what the business is going to do anyways? And how do I make it usable for the developers anyways? And it is really a more of a mindset and a culture thing, I think, than necessarily a tooling thing that we're reluctantly continuing to do.
100%.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Security is meant to be an enabling role. Same with IT, right? Like, you don't want to be known as a CISO as, here comes the parade of no's. That's not how you partner with a business, and that's not how you actually optimize for agility and innovation. I also agree with what Maya's saying is you get more done by creating this culture of security, right? So at the end of the day, there's two types of human error. There's the human error due to ignorance, lack of training, and then there's human error because the business just isn't emphasizing me to spend my time this way. So I know that this is wrong, but everybody else is doing it. So how do we stop that latter one? How do we create this idea that in the business, we really do care about these security outcomes? We're, of course, never going to have perfect detection, but that doesn't mean we can't say to everybody who has an influencing role over a security outcome, and certainly engineers are part of that, how do you, in every micro decision that you make, are keeping the principles of our security strategy and our culture in mind? And the way to do that is really set the tone and really sweat the details on the things that you can detect well and make it part of the culture that we care about the details. We're going beyond what SOC 2 is asking us to do. We're going beyond what we think we need to do from an auditing perspective. And we're trying to work backwards from the things that we know if we don't take care of, we're going to be a headline tomorrow. And if you do that, you do it early enough in the business's life cycle, everybody's going to be on board. What you need to avoid is this idea that IT and security there to take care of the security problem for me, and I'm not really part of it. So if anything goes wrong, it's really on them. I just use my computer and they make sure that it's safe. Got to get away from that. Everybody has to participate in keeping the company secure. And that's about recognizing that it's everybody's job. And that's like the most important thing and probably the most effective thing they can do to balance agility and innovation.
Totally well said. Yeah, I think having the right tooling is really important, but even more important is having that culture that spreads across every single person within the organization. So thank you for those insights. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and focus on one of the key themes of this panel, which is talking about supply chain security, policy, and compliance. We have seen attacks like SolarWinds, right, where malicious code was inserted into software that then got rolled out to multiple high-profile organizations. And even recently, XZ I don't know how many of you saw that incident, where a sophisticated open source contributor installed a backdoor into one of the most commonly used library, which impacted popular Linux distributions, right? Supply chain attacks are increasingly becoming sophisticated and hard to detect. And I want to first maybe start this question with Ophir. What are the most effective strategies for detecting and mitigating supply chain attacks?
Yeah, so this one is my favorite. I would say be paranoid, okay, and sleep with one eye open and ask the right questions. So the most intimidating thing about the supply chain is the verb, like the jargon is very complex. You go and read some of the security frameworks, the models one, like Salsa. I read the whole spec, right? Salsa, for those of you who don't know, it's a security framework that outlines a set of standards and practices designed to protect the software supply chain. So it was released as open source by Google a few years ago, and I really like it because it gives you a framework and a model to think about the attacks, right? Even if you don't address each of the attacks, it makes you think, it makes you talk about the problems in the software supply chain. And I think first and foremost, you need to have a security literacy. As Jason and Maya mentioned, it's a cultural thing. It's a people thing, right? You need to have the security awareness and training. And if you look at Martin Fowler wrote a book called UML Distilled, where it brings you just the gist of what is important to know about how to do UML, rather than reading the entire spec. So we deserve to have more education and material, and ChainGuard is doing a lot in that regard. For example, you look at the blogs posted by their CTO, he explains SBOM as a list of ingredients, right? That the cake is, this metaphor is used all the time. Like I'm making a cake. What are the ingredients that I use to make this cake? So I can ask questions like, am I allergic to Log4j? And I can ask questions like, what machines in my environment are affected by Log4j? And then you have all these kinds of other stuff like provenance. Provenance is just a fancy word of saying, give me the recipe of how this cake was made. So I can trust the vendor that created it, right? And I can set a contract and some expectations between the producer and the consumer of the software. If you ask me where to start, I would say definitely image vulnerability. So make sure that the base images that you're using, whether it's in your cloud or in your container security solution, is safe. You have distroless, it's so confusing. You have distroless, and then you have Alpine, and then you have all kinds of images. And the most critical part is that a lot of developers and DevOps go to ChatGPT, and let's face it, and they say, give me an Nginx image deployment on Kubernetes. And no one knows where this container image was built from. I mean, would you let a stranger into your house nilly-willy? Probably not, right? You need to create a good chain of custody before you start deploying stuff in your environment. You need to ask questions like, who has access to deploy things to my cluster? Am I using GitOps? Do I have audit for everything that is changing in my environment? Am I applying the principle of least privilege to get access to the container registry? Do we allow running container images that were built more than 90 years ago? So having a strong change of custody is key to achieving a secure software supply chain. And yeah, it's an ongoing process. So you need to start somewhere and improve and iterate.
Totally. I've never heard anyone use the cake analogy before for supply chain, but that was very delightful and tasty at the same time. Jason or Maya, do you want to add more here?
I think I'll just agree. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a pretty spicy take on this one. I think when it comes to, like, I think about this problem both as a software problem, and I also, as a developer, I think about it as, you know, the bill of materials that we were talking about, and the dependency graph of my software. So I think we as businesses, when we're deciding what technological choices we're going to bring to bear when we build our own software, if we're a SaaS app company, we're not considering the dependency graph story of the languages or the frameworks. And I'll say that if this is something that you truly care about, and you look at things like JavaScript as like an ecosystem, it's like a ramshackle of millions of dependencies where they're all maintained by random people that have no oversight. And you have, if you even have a basic JavaScript web project, you have perhaps tens of thousands of dependencies to worry about. And any one of those could be a potential source of exploit, right? All it takes is one, maligned open source maintainer to execute some sort of shell code on post installation script of any of these libraries, and now you have a massive incident either of a development machine or a server. And tools like GitHub that can do some basic inspection are there, but I think we as as organizations don't do enough of in terms of saying which languages and frameworks should we use, minimizing the amount of the dependency graph and the exponential growth that it represents is a major tool in our toolbox that we should be making when we're making a technological decision. In JavaScript, that's probably on the end of the spectrum of worst of all of them.
Totally.
I'll agree with both Ofer and Jason on what they both said. I think detection is very hard, and even the most sophisticated organizations have trouble detecting supply chain attacks. In terms of mitigation, again, everything that Ofer said, I think if all you do is regularly patch your dependencies, regularly redeploy your environment, and then move to a minimal base image, like that's already, you're doing more than 90% of what other people are doing. And that sounds trivial. That's still going to take a lot of organizations a year or two to do. So like that's where I would start, the basics in some sense.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, it is a lot of things for organizations to keep in mind to make sure that they're secure, and maybe like that nicely brings me to my next question. I'm an organization who wants to build a secure organization, have all the tools in place and policy automation to prevent supply chain attacks to begin with. I want to do all of that, but 1 to 2 years and knowing everything sounds overwhelming to me. Where do I start? I'm a new organization who wants to establish. How do I go about it? Who wants to take this question?
I would love.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I think preparing a vendor security questionnaire is a very good place to start, and having legal terms in the contract that require the vendors to adhere to your internal security protocols, right? You have the Amazon vendor security policy, and you have the minimum viable security policy, which serves as an examples. And the only way, the most impactful way to deter vendors and early stage startups, they are the weakest link in your supply chain, right? They don't necessarily have the capacity to have fully secure software supply chain, and they need to move fast and they need to ship code. So this is a very good target for attackers. So make sure that you scrutinize each and every one of your third party and the vendors that you're working in. I would say also trust but verify. The CrowdStrike example, they did a mistake, right? But at the same time, do you really roll out changes from your vendors to all your production environment? To me, it doesn't make sense. You start with the canarying, you start with gradual rollout. So be very cautious and put it in ladder, because the way that vendors are deterred is if they get sued for millions and millions of dollars. And this is where they actually take more proactive action towards their security hygiene.
Totally. Anyone add additional thoughts there?
I'll just add really quickly. I think that's great advice. I want to emphasize the canarying aspect of that. I think is really, really valuable. And I think the thought exercise you want to go into, if you're brand new to this and you're like, all right, where should I start? I think it's getting the folks in the room that have access to the keys of the kingdom already, and then ask them, what is the worst nightmare scenario? Which vendor are we using today? If secrets leaked, if all the data got exfiltrated, what would be the ones that would be the company ending situations? And then now work backwards from there. Let's assume the worst is happening, right? Like that vendor did get compromised. How could we know about it prior to being notified by a law enforcement, apparatus, or being a headline in the New York Times? Like, how do we know before that? Let's start from there and kind of work our way backwards. And often that leads to canarying and things like that. And then finally, assume that you will be compromised eventually. That's a secret that you've given to a vendor will leak. What is your operational readiness of responding to that incident? How challenging is it for your engineering teams to rotate secrets? Are there certain secrets that they're so crucial to the operating efficiency of the organization, like their certificates? You have to redistribute them out to everybody. They use to sign everything. You have to now reestablish trust. Like, how do you actually accomplish that? Going through that in a red team exercise, or even just like a basic tabletop exercise to understand your readiness for not if, but when one of these vendors gets compromised. How are you going to respond to that? Would be the things that I would focus on.
Totally. Yeah, that nicely brings me to my next question. We have all of these tools and organizational capabilities, but however, some of these tools create a ton of alerts, right? Like vulnerability there, something you need to take care of here. And this might lead to some sort of alert fatigue. And often the users who are looking at these dashboards and tools don't know which one to prioritize. How can organizations avoid this alert fatigue and prioritize the right set of priorities to focus on? Like, why don't we start with Jason this time?
Yeah, this is actually something I care about a lot. I think that if you have policy and you're not measuring the policy, you're not even producing alerts, then you really just have suggestions. You don't even have a policy. But let's imagine you do have alerts, and now you're inundated with them, right? And whether they're alerts from issues that are coming in from external attacks or they're internal compliance alerts, they're alerts. The thing that you need is, if you really care about this problem, is you need consequences for ignoring the alerts. If the alerts are truly things that need to be followed up on, and there isn't a process that creates a consequence for the ignoring of those alerts, then you really are on the inevitable path to fatigue. Because one day, someone will be too busy and they will not get through all the alerts for that day. And then when nothing happens and nothing bad happens to them, they'll be like, you know what? I can let that be the new normal of not getting through everything. And that's when the fatigue starts setting in. So what you actually want to do is you want to create a reasonable, proportionate consequence for the alerts not being dealt with. And this is why, at least at 1Password and in my career, I've been such an advocate for end user driven remediation, because if you can distribute the alert review process or the actioning process to end users who are often in the best position to deal with compliance issues on their device because they're literally sitting in front of it, you distribute that problem out to them and you give them a proportionate consequence and say, hey, if you don't take care of these unencrypted SSH keys that are all over, your home folder, we're not going to let you into GitHub anymore. Like, that's a reasonable consequence. And guess what? They're not going to get fatigued by that because you've distributed the problem evenly. And if they are getting fatigued by it because they have that many of that kind of alert, then you got bigger problems than fatigue, really, at the end of the day. But if you're fatiguing people, but if you add the consequence and then people start complaining that they're becoming overwhelmed with these consequences, it's probably a good sign that the things that you're alerting on actually aren't that important, because people are now coming to you saying, hey, we know this is something that it would be ideal if we got done, but we all know at the end of the day that this isn't something that we need to do. And I think end users are the most beleaguered by alert fatigue. OS updates are the prime example of this. How many OS updates and browser updates do we install on a daily basis that actually have no security value at all? And then we fatigue these users and these constant updates. And then when we're finally dealing with a hurry up, we got to patch the Chrome because there's a massive CVE, everybody's already fatigued out. That's the problem that we need to solve as a security group, is how do we get folks to really only alert, and so that when we're asking users and we're providing a consequence when they aren't actually patching their stuff, it feels reasonable. And we're not there yet, but we need to get there.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah, I think getting the right middle ground, the right fine-tuned point is extremely hard, and we have a long ways to go there. Anyone like to add more here, Ophir, Maya?
I'll always jump in. On the defender side, I think I completely agree with what Jason is saying, and I think you gave the example there of getting end users to take action. I think I think you used to be at Collide. Collide did that really well, right? Getting users in Slack to have to respond to something to fix their device with a reasonable consequence. I think there's also something to be said for we are starting to see like a lot more triage of alerts because you have too many alerts. So finding the signal from the noise is becoming really hard. And I'm seeing a lot of people use either deciding to kind of ignore all the alerts that come with their existing tools and just do everything from scratch themselves and build their own detection logic, or do some sort of triage over the alerts that they're getting. My spicy take is on the producer side. I think on the security company side, we are writing too many alerts that are useless. And so what I mean by that is, like, there's too many things where you can't take action, or that are not relevant, that aren't for a vulnerability that's reachable, that aren't whatever. And the way that I've seen this play out really terribly is actually a couple of years ago. I was talking to a customer who was evaluating our product versus a competitor's product. And they said, oh, the competitor's product is better, it has more alerts. And it was like, but like 90% of those aren't valid. And it was like, oh, it doesn't matter, there's more of them, therefore it's better. And I feel like we need to shift a little bit in the industry to think as to, like, what is actually fixable and useful versus just like pure numbers. Because I feel like at least some of our customers are still thinking in that way, that more alerts is better rather than that fixable, precise alerts are better.
Totally. Yeah, Ophir, do you want to add anything here?
Maybe two sentences. I agree with everything that Jason and Maya said. It's a shameless plug for Wiz, right? But I want to know, give me the top critical and high vulnerabilities that can actually be exploited at runtime. So I want to know not just if a package was used during the build, but if someone is actually using it at runtime. And then can I do lateral movement from my Kubernetes cluster to my AWS account, and from there to my S3 bucket? And if I can, do I have PII and data findings in that bucket? So give me like the attacker playbook that I should be cautious and defend first and foremost. I don't want to go and browse through thousands of findings and alerts. There is a joke in Kubernetes that the best way to set up a Kubernetes cluster is to let someone else do it for you. And I feel it's like the same in security, right? You want a curated set of security controls, and you want vendors to find the toxic combination. So as more data and context that you have, the more interesting questions you can ask, and obviously doing it at scale and multi-cloud is very, very challenging.
Totally. Very well said. Yeah. Thank you. That was like a lot of insightful responses on supply chain and alerts and how do we mitigate them. I would like to move us forward to the second topic of our panel today, which is about secrets management, which is one small but mighty portion of cybersecurity. I think Jason earlier called out that secrets are keys to your kingdom, and managing these securely is fundamental to having a secure organization. However, recent surveys show that 3 out of 4 organizations have had their secrets leaked, be it API keys or credentials. These can have disastrous consequences. I want to turn this question over to Maya. Do you think organizations are doing enough to tackle this problem? Like, what would you recommend organizations do here?
Yeah, I don't think they're doing enough on average to tackle this problem. I think as it relates to detecting leaks, there's quite a few open source tools and capabilities to help you detect when your secret's been leaked. So something like TruffleHog can look at your code, can look at Slack, can look at email, can look at lots of things to figure out where your secrets have gone. But I think ideally we're doing prevention, not detection. And so that's implementing a secrets management solution in your organization that actually works, that's actually developer friendly and developer usable, generating secrets or access credentials that have minimum privilege for what they're trying to do. And then some amount of like education of like, okay, if this happens, it's okay, please sound the alarm and we can take action to actually go rotate those secrets.
Totally. Anyone else like to add more here?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this. I think in my experience, the number one obstacle for really delving deep into secrets and managing them well, beyond doing the obvious, which is, all right, let's at least get a safe place to put them, like a credential manager, let's encourage developers to use it. Then you move on to the detection phases. Are we actually using those tools? Are the secrets actually being secured there? A lot of CISOs are afraid to take that detection step because they all know the truth. They know that any even basic look under the covers is they are going to find a secret leak. They are going to find credentials that are not secured on company devices and BYOD. It's going to happen. It is inevitable. So this idea that 3 out of 4 organizations experience secret leak, it's really 4 out of 4. The last one is really just in denial that it's occurred, or they don't know that it's leaked yet. So the challenge here is, why are they scared? They're scared because they know the moment that they find those secrets, they now have an incident that they have to declare, and they have no idea what the sprawl of that incident is going to be, what its impact is going to be, what their obligations are in terms of reporting to external parties. It is an activity that is fraught with peril for them. And so as an organization, if you care about this and you're not a CISO, you're maybe a C level above that, or you have you have the most to lose from a secret leak. You need to give your CISO and come up with the operating parameters of what we're going to do, not if, but when we find an unsecured credential. What is our process going to be for understanding the scope of that impact? What are our operating rules in terms of what are the things that we're willing to accept in terms of risk? What are the things that we would need to see in conjunction with finding an unsecured secret to consider it an incident? So you need to get all those rules up front with your CISO so that they feel empowered and not terrified at opening up cans of worms that don't need to be opened up right now. And once you make it safe for them to do that, they'll go and they'll find where the secrets are. They already know where they are today. Tons of developer tools, they just store them in plain text right in your home folder, right? If I use some of these CLI tools that are popular with AWS or GitHub, like some of these, even some of at least the older versions, just put like the OAuth token or the API token right in clear text, right in a configuration file. I don't need to know that we're not doing the right thing because I know the tools themselves actually encourage the wrong thing to happen. And now all it takes is that one device to be compromised. And now here I am trying to figure out what is the impact of this developer's GitHub secret being everywhere going to be. And the answer is it's not good. So I think you got to get your incident response and decision tree up front set up. You need to tell it, your CISO, this is, we want you to actively look for this. And they will absolutely find issues where secrets are not being managed. And then now you're having a real conversation how to solve this problem.
Totally, totally. I want to expand on that and turn it over to Ophir here. What do you think is the best approach to start addressing secrets management organization? We talked about tooling, we talked about culture, like where do we start? Which one is more important? Or is there other parameters that we're not considering here, Ophir?
Yeah, I would say start small. Start with using a secrets manager, or even better, if you go the identity federation. It's all about security hygiene, right? You don't want credentials moving around. And if you already use them, try to avoid from long-lived credentials. They are the root of all evil. If a workload gets compromised, an attacker threat actor finds these credentials, you never know when the attacker is going to use them. So make sure that you rotate your secrets. Make sure that you have a centralized tool like Azure Key Vault or Google Secret Manager or HashiCorp Vault. It doesn't matter. But make sure that you have a very well-defined tool to manage and rotate your secrets. And use a secret scanner on your CI/CD and code bases. And as Jason said, CISOs might be afraid to deploy it because of what they are about to find out. But try to shift left and find it even before it gets pushed into the Git.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. I think we all touched on how culture and processes is so fundamentally important. And we talked about like how every individual in organizations needs to be empowered and educated to ensure to prevent these incidents from happening to begin with. I want to turn this question over to Maya. Like, what do you think are the key challenges in educating developers about secure secret management practices? What can organizations do better here? Is there any specific advice you have for them?
Yeah, I think developers generally know the basics. So they probably know not to keep secrets unencrypted. They probably know not to put them in public places. And hopefully they also know not to put them in things like code or in Slack or that type of thing, or a doc or anything that's against your internal policy. There probably is a gap around more complex secret management topics. So things like having multiple versions of a secret that are valid at a particular time to allow for rotation, or separating between prod, test, dev secrets, or as Ofer was just talking about, moving off of long-lived credentials to short-lived credentials. So if your organizations are maybe doing some of these things, then there's probably some education to be done to teach people more than what the basics that they already know. But I think probably the gap is not as much education and more around usability, right? It's too easy to do the wrong thing, and it's not easy enough to do the right thing. So rather than focus on education, I would focus on how do you make it easy for your devs to store and use secrets. And then I would also look at the usability of or the ability that you have rather to rotate secrets. Like if something is compromised, can you actually rotate a secret? Or can you get a dev to change whatever is coded into the application to rotate the secret? That's what I would look rather than pure education.
Totally. Separation of concerns, easy tooling, easy ability to rotate secrets. So those are the three key themes that I heard. Jason or Ophir, do you want to add more here?
I just want to just repeat something Maya said. I think it was a really great way to distill it down. Make the easiest thing for them to do the right thing, right? If you give them the tools and it just becomes seamless to do the right thing, that's often way, way more powerful than having this overwrought policy with consequences on it. Like, just give them the tools. By you actually paying the money for those tools and giving them to the engineers, you're signaling them, this is so important to us that you do this right, that we paid real money, like real dollars in the top of the barrel to get you to do the right thing. So make the easy way the right way. And the way to do that is give all your folks the right tools. Credential management and password management are like the basics, and there's even more things that you can obtain that send the right message in that way.
Totally. Awesome. We are getting close to the end here of our panel. I have only a couple of more questions for you all. And here's the first one. We know that security overall, especially the prevention part, doesn't get enough attention and focus from all of industry. At the same time, some elements of security gets more attention than others, right? I want to open up this question to all of you. What are some underrated aspects of security that doesn't get enough attention but should?
I would love to take that.
Go for it.
So when you think about the laptop employees' laptops, so you have browser extensions and ID extensions, and no one knows where they come from, right? And we install them on the laptops, and developers have access to production systems, to staging, to whatever. So we kind of tend to overlook and not scan and not verify the provenance and the origin of these kinds of extensions. And employees can be sometimes silly and sometimes have data in places where they shouldn't be. As Jason mentioned, the tooling we use, for example, the AWS CLI, you have the credentials in plain text. So if a developer downloads an ID extension that has access to the disk and just sends all the data back to some remote server, then easy peasy, right?
Totally. Yeah. I should look at all the browser extensions that I have right now and ensure everything is secure to begin with. Jason or Maya, anyone like to add more here?
Yeah, go ahead, Maya. You go first.
Okay, I'll add on to what Ofer just said, which is I think corporate IT security is absolutely something that's overlooked, and that's kind of what you're talking about in that category. And one part of that, especially that worries me, is we have a lot of remote workers now because people are working from home or from wherever, and actually getting access to that device or securing that device, unless you have like an MDM deployed that is very controlling, you can't do as much as you might have been able to do in a physical office. I've heard a lot of concern about this specifically around support workers. So like your support team that is in a completely different geography than the rest of your company is even harder to, and they have access to all of your customer data, is particularly of a concern, I think, for a lot of folks right now. The second aspect of security that I would add as being underrated is backups. I've talked to a lot of people and they're still really scared about ransomware. And then I say, okay, well, are you doing backups? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, are you testing your backups? And they're like, oh, no. So like, I feel like it sounds weird to say that that's security because it is, reliability and availability, but like we do need to test our backups.
Yeah. Hope is not the answer here. Jason.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting time in the security landscape today. We've actually solved a lot of the problems that I remember starting my career with. Like EDR wasn't a thing even 10 years ago. And you used to be able to just connect your computer to the internet. It was running a Windows computer. And within an hour, it would just be compromised by background malware. I mean, that was the state of the union in terms of what security was like. And we've done a really good job of building great NSM tools and EDR software and all this stuff to really at least get to the level where now the next rung of the ladder that we have to solve for is this human element. And I call it the human element because that's what Verizon called it in the data breach investigations report, the DBIR that they put out. And if you look at all like the root causes of some of the incidents, like towering above all the rest was this thing called the human element, 68% of most of those incidents there. And I think as a security industry, we look at that and we go, more training, more videos that they have to watch. Let's get them in that PowerPoint again. Like let's trick them with phishing emails and get them to feel weird about clicking links and emails. Like those are the best ideas that we've had so far. And every other industry in the whole world, other than us, has had to deal with human error. Like that is like airlines have had to deal with this, manufacturing has had to deal with the human error problem. And we are now, as an industry, finally getting to a place where the human beings that use the systems finally have enough free will through BYOD and working from home that they have free will now and they can do whatever they want. We can only control those systems so much. And now we have to employ all the behavioral science, safety science lessons that we've learned in all these other industries now to the security and IT industry. That, I think, will be the next area that we'll see the most innovation, because it's really the last thing standing between us and having a material impact on the significance and the quantity of breaches that we see. Is how do we get human error, and that's inadvertent issues being caused by human beings, down to zero? And guess what? Other industries actually have done this, and we just need to take those lessons and we need to apply them to our industry. And I guarantee you the answer is not going to be more PowerPoints. We can do better than that.
Excellent insight, really well said. I have one final question for all of you all. I'll let you go. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for viewers who will be watching this video? And what are your personal predictions for the future of cybersecurity? And what are you most excited about? Who would like to start?
I'll go first. I mean, I'll be very obvious in my predictions. Budgets are going to keep going up, right? I talked to somebody the other day that said the only thing I can be certain of is that a big bank's budget in security is going to be higher next year than it was this year. So people are going to keep investing in the space and trying to continue to secure their environments, and we're going to keep seeing new, different threats every single year, and that's not going to change. I think if I had like an exciting prediction, it would be that I think that security teams are going to be able to do more interesting work, more work that's more precise to their organizations, in the sense that, like, if we truly adopt ML and some of our security tooling, a lot of the grunt work that a lot of security teams do right now goes away. And we still have the same size team, and you're probably not going to reduce that team, although you might. But now you need to upskill those people to do more complex tasks and do more interesting and relevant things for your business than what you were doing before. So I think we're going to see a lot of knowledge development in security.
Totally. Thank you. For Jason, any closing thoughts from you all?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited by the future, because, and I'll echo what Maya said, is I think ML and AI, these are things that are going to fundamentally change the nature of our work. And I think we've been so used to a world of needles and haystacks, right? And we have a lot of hay and we don't have that many needles. AI really just burns all the hay down, and all we have are needles to work with. And that's really exciting, because we're going to be spending way less of our time searching, and we're going to be inundated with high quality, real problems that we have to solve. And that is a much better position to be in than this endless searching for just the kernel of what's happening. We're just going to be inundated with really good actionable data. And I think as an industry, we're going to be able to spend more time building solutions than we are building things that are looking for problems, because we will have the problems. We'll have way more than we have today, and we can really start having good conversations about what are the best things to fix those problems. We've been doing that a little bit, but it'll be completely different, I think, in just a few short years. So I'm excited for that.
Totally. We really need to find that needle faster and quicker, for sure. Ofer?
Yeah, I agree with both Jason and Maya, and I think that we will see more use of AI, more sophisticated attacks, more automation. And if you think about the cons of this, is that the time between an exploit is exposed and actively exploited will get smaller and smaller. But at the same time, there is a silver lining that the mean time to fix will be faster, right? Because we'll have better LLMs and better Gen AI tools to find the vulnerability and fix that, and maybe also provide you with like auto remediation. So give me a PR in GitHub that fixes. I don't want to work. I mean, life is too short to fix CVEs and malware. Do it for me.
Totally. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing all those valuable insights. That brings us to the close of today's panel today. A huge thank you to each of you for sharing your valuable insights. We have covered everything from policy automation, supply chain attacks, to secrets management best practices. I'm sure our audience has learned a lot today. We hope to have all of you back to share more insights with our community. For everyone watching, thank you for tuning in and enjoy the rest of PulumiUP 2024 talks and showcases. Thank you all.